This week, can taking your temperature stop the spread of coronavirus? Or will genetics be the answer? Or maybe you're just trying to drown out the noise. Shall I, shan't I, shall I, shan't I? Maybe not just now. Got to happen soon though, hasn't it? Welcome. Hope you're well. Lara's online too. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks. I tried to edit out my roots before posting a picture on social media yesterday. Didn't work, I had to give up.
Hair's going to go crazy soon, isn't it? Listen, I've got something to cover up that hair though, if you're interested. Take a look at this.
Oh goodness, that looks a bit dramatic.
Yeah, it's a thermal imaging helmet. Now, the idea is it can quickly screen people to check for fever. It's already being used in China, but the company now says they're talking to governments and police forces across the UK, Europe and the Middle East.
It looks quite menacing, but impressive if it does the job.
Yeah, and around the world, companies and governments are looking at testing people's temperatures to try and spot those who might have COVID-19. Vodafone is another company that's rolling out thermal imaging with a camera which can scan up to 8 people at a time. They say it's accurate to within 0.3 degrees Celsius. The question is, though, how useful is reading people's temperatures in stopping the spread of coronavirus?
People have variable core body temperatures. So the range is between 36.5 to 37.5, but there is some variability here. So that data itself might not be that useful. Second, there are an increasing amount of evidence showing that a larger number of people are asymptomatic. So even if you do not develop a fever, then you can still go on to infect others.
For the most part these days especially, I would imagine most people who are feeling ill would put their hand up first and say, I'm not feeling well, or that there is something wrong. And they wouldn't try and fool the device, for example, by taking ibuprofen or paracetamol, which would bring their temperature down anyway if it was only slightly elevated. So the practical utility of this idea seems to me rather limited.
But Vodafone feels it's still worthwhile.
It is very possible to have false positives and to miss people coming through. However, we think we will catch or identify enough people that it's still a valuable tool to add to our toolkit for creating a safe working environment while we wait for a vaccine for COVID-19.
So instead of just taking a one-off temperature measurement, you could look at taking continuous ones and even add data from other vital signs too. In fact, that's just what this trial's doing.
Liechtenstein, a principality with a population of only 38,000, is piloting a programme to fit its citizens with biometric bracelets in a drive to track potential cases of COVID-19 in real time.
We tried to find kind of a signature of this disease by measuring parameters of the human body that could give us an early indication if there's a second wave coming. The bracelet measures the heartbeat, the skin temperature, and some other parameters that can be easily measured on the wrist.
But these bracelets are not a new product and actually have a surprising origin.
It's really a solution for couples who are trying to get pregnant. So through the device, we're measuring different physiological parameters, and based on those physiological parameters, we can detect the fertile window. And then when COVID started to come in, we realized that the combination of the parameters that we're measuring could be basically uniquely suited to look at COVID and look at basically monitoring the infection. Then we have a couple of other countries and larger projects that are also interested. So we might make this study part of a larger study in the end, and that we would roll out Europe-wide.
However, the rollout of biometric bracelets across Europe may not be straightforward.
Health data is particularly sensitive data, so it has a higher level of protection. And you can only process it on member state basis if you have a strong legal basis provided by law to do that. So it might even be possible that some EU laws would need to adopt a new law allowing for the processing of that data.
And in Belgium, there's a very different type of wristband being introduced at the port of Antwerp.
When Corona started, we had this idea where we said, hey, wait a minute, we already do measuring between typically a device and between a machine. Couldn't we just measure distance between two devices? And now we can also provide social distancing capabilities using the same technology. And the wearer gets a vibration when he or she comes too close. They need to step back to get out of the dangerous zone.
The bracelets could also be activated for contact tracing, but privacy is an objection.
Prior to COVID-19, everybody thought my privacy is the starting point of everything in every debate. Yeah, well, that is not really the case any longer if you have to make sure that everybody stays healthy, right?
However, the introduction of this technology has worried trade unions.
Well, you have to understand how unions work and think. And if they do not fully understand what this is as a piece of technology and what it provides and what the benefits are for their members, they object by definition, right? And I think that's a mistake some of the companies made, that they said, oh, this is cool technology, we're going to implement it, without taking the time to explain what this is for and what the benefits are.
Across the world, companies are recognising that their products can be repurposed in the battle against COVID-19. However, as governments increasingly look to technology as a solution, ethical and legal boundaries are starting to be tested.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that robots were being developed to test temperatures in waiting rooms in Sweden. A new quadruped robot dog was unveiled by Chinese company Unitree. And full-body disinfection pods were trialled at Hong Kong Airport. This booth has an antimicrobial coating and sprays passengers for 40 seconds with a sanitizing mist. It was also the week that an engineer and senior vice president at Amazon made $1 million decision to quit his job over allegations of unsafe factory conditions. Tim Bray said workers had been fired for circulating a petition complaining about the poor conditions. Amazon says the employees were dismissed for violating internal practices. Drone air corridors will be created for remote regions of the UK, according to the Civil Aviation Authority, allowing for contactless deliveries of essential items. The relaxed flying rules will see designated zones where drone operators can fly out of the line of sight if they meet safety standards. NASA announced it's teaming up with Tom Cruise to make a film about the International Space Station, but wouldn't comment on speculation the actor may be headed into orbit. NASA says more details on the film will be revealed at the appropriate time. And finally, robots seem to be lending a helping hand all over the place these days, and grocery shopping is no exception. This robot, called Second Hands, is funded by the EU. It's been designed by a consortium of universities and online grocery retailer Ocado. His purpose is providing a second pair of hands to workers and taking over more menial tasks.
At times during this lockdown, it's felt like life might never be the same again. The stress of financial uncertainty, coupled with the intensity of being cooped up at home, could be a dangerous combination for our mental health. Patient.info has a wealth of articles and clinical advice curated by medical authors. Younger viewers and their parents and carers can turn to Young Minds, which includes support for people with other conditions, such as OCD and autism, they're now coping with in the lockdown. COVID Calm was set up to help frontline healthcare workers with free mindfulness and stress management tools. PPE for the mind, if you will. If your stress levels don't need that kind of support, congratulations. A little mindful meditation might help you stay that way. Daily meditation exercises from the Smiling Mind app have helped me tune out counterproductive worrying and focus on the things I can control. And Spotify is curating a daily wellness playlist full of podcasts, meditation guides and more. Of course, in the age of AI, there are plenty of bots to chat it out with if you can't find a human. Wiser chats through your problems, suggesting therapy-based exercises to help. I found it can't talk specifically about coronavirus yet, but you can bring in a qualified human therapist if you upgrade to premium. Booster Buddy helps you start the day with 3 simple mindfulness tasks and can be set up to manage your to-do list and medication reminders too. And My Possible Self has a mood tracker and suggests health and well-being exercises appropriate to your state of mind. And One Click Viewer is curating a COVID-19 newsfeed for his family, filled with only positive stories. Sometimes just taking a break from your own worried head is enough to keep you going. And Homenauts is the perfect place to look for inspiration. As well as tips from the professionally isolated on surviving the lockdown, there is a crowdsourced list of activities you can try to take your mind off things. There is no order to this rapidly growing compendium, but scrolling through it feels like a kind of therapy in itself. And I'm going to leave you with a page that now resides permanently on my second monitor, for those moments when I need less COVID-19 and more puppy.
That was Kate. If you have concerns or could just do with some reassurance or coping tactics at the moment, then you can visit the NHS website where they have a coronavirus portal with links to approved helplines.
Okay, let's talk about the latest research into the virus. And for that, we have to go to Iceland. Back in 2013, we went to Iceland to a company called Decode Genetics, who were doing genetic research on what is a pretty unusual country. See, Iceland has a record of its people's ancestry going back 1,000 years, and therefore it has some idea of who shares genes with who. Icelanders have also been donating blood to the company for years, which is then deep frozen in this blood bank, so it can be used for future research into what genes may make people resistant or susceptible to certain diseases. And now that is paying off in spades. I spoke to the director of Decode earlier, and he told me that having sequenced the genes of half of the population, he's had a massive head start in trying to work out why the coronavirus affects some people worse than others.
This team has been working together for almost a quarter of a century, and it is almost like everything else we have done, it feels like that it was merely a preparation for this. We have enormous amount of data on the people who got infected. We are in a privileged position to look at the genetics of the patients and see how the genetics influences the probability of getting infected and the probability of getting seriously ill when you become infected.
Decode has now tested nearly 14% of the population for the coronavirus, the highest in any country, and that's really informed our understanding of COVID-19. For example, he says that, contrary to some reports, it seems that nearly everyone who has the disease does eventually display symptoms. And the race is now on to understand why those symptoms range so wildly from the very mild to the very severe. Is it because they've previously caught a different coronavirus and developed some immunity? Or is it to do with different strains of the virus itself? Viruses naturally mutate as they travel from one person to another, and as this one has spread, it's morphed into many different strains that can be identified from its genetic data and which are being shared by scientists across the world. What's not known at the moment is whether some strains are more harmful than others.
When viruses mutate, they usually mutate to become more infectious and less harmful, because the evolutionary goal of the virus is to go as widely as possible, to become as many as possible. And if the virus causes a serious disease, then it limits the transmission, because the person who becomes seriously ill is not going to move around and spread the virus. But this virus has found a way around this, because most people are mildly infected and they can roam around and spread the virus all over the place. But then there are the few unfortunate. So this virus has the best of both worlds. It can spread widely and it can kill.
What's also fascinating is that because the virus has mutated as it's travelled across the world, it's possible for geneticists to examine a patient and tell them the route that their infection took as it travelled from China. In the US, for example, the virus first arrived on the west coast directly from China. But meanwhile, another strain was making its way across Europe, and it arrived in New York in the middle of March. And that was the strain that eventually came to dominate the country, probably because New York is the gateway most Americans use to come back home. And while Italy seemed to be the epicenter of the European outbreak, something else was going unnoticed.
When the authorities were focusing on people coming from ski vacations in the Alps, the virus was clearly sneaking into the country from other countries, such as Great Britain. And it's absolutely clear that very early in the epidemic, the virus was widely spread in British society, because a very significant proportion of the cases in Iceland came to Iceland through those who were traveling from Great Britain.
Despite everything, Iceland is now starting to recover from the epidemic. It's come through with very few deaths and without the complete lockdown that many countries have enforced. This, says Dr. Stephenson, is because with widespread testing, the country could quickly find those who were infected, trace who they'd been in contact with, and then just isolate those people, stopping the epidemic before it got out of control. Some, of course, would say that Iceland has had it relatively easy with its small population and remote location. Would these kind of measures, including this massively manually intensive contact tracing, work in bigger countries like the UK?
Listen to me, there is no alibi in your size, all right? You could use exactly the same methods that we have used, and I think that you could be as effective as we, just as long as there is a will and there are resources to do it. Yes, in Great Britain, you have a lot more people who are infected because your population size is incredibly much larger than ours, but you have also more people to do the work. I think that what is amazing when you look at this epidemic, that the two most resourceful countries in the world, really, the United Kingdom and the United States, that they were so completely unprepared for this.
This has been a demonstration of how preparation and early action has saved lives. But it's also a demonstration of how far technology has come to be able to crunch the enormous amount of data that is now spotting needles in genetic haystacks.
I think that what this epidemic is showing is how incredibly powerful it is to be able to bring together large amounts of information. We bring it together and mine it effectively. We would not have been able to do this 20 years ago.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I know, and let's hope they and other scientists keep on making those breakthroughs.
Let's hope so. Now, a lot of us are, of course, working from home at the moment, and as well as trying to perfect your background for video calls, a lot of us are having to put up with things like this. Or this.
Yeah, I'm often trying to compete with the washing machine's fast spin cycle, I have to say.
Well, Chris Fox has been trying to find ways to be heard above the background noise.
Today, I'm on a mission to make as much noise as possible to see whether machine learning can clean up our audio. You might have seen online a lot of gamers are really excited that NVIDIA, the graphics card maker, is testing some noise cancelling technology. It's called RTX Voice, and to try it out, I have a professional microphone here and a high-end gaming laptop with an NVIDIA RTX graphics card. And on this side, I have an ordinary laptop running some software called Crisp, which says it can do the same thing without the expensive graphics card. The first test is a noisy city apartment. I've left the doors open so we can hear the trains going past. The washing machine is on, and for good measure, this speaker is blasting out the sound of a dog barking. Okay, I can hear a train going past now, so let's turn on the noise cancellation. And what NVIDIA says it's doing here is using AI on the graphics card on a bit of spare capacity that you might not be using while gaming to do the noise cancellation. Okay, we have a train going past. So same experiment again, let's turn on the noise cancellation. There's the dog. And how does the laptop fare without the graphics card? This is just the software AI running on an ordinary laptop. Next we'll test in a coffee shop, and since I can't go to a real one, I'm playing crowd noise from this speaker. We're using the coffee machine and playing some music from this speaker, all while I read the blurb on Claire from Steps' autobiography. Claire Richards has been on an extraordinary rollercoaster journey since she joined Steps at 19. After the highs of chart-topping success and the fame that brought, her life hit rock bottom when she left the band. But she fought her way back to create a whole new career in television, finding her inner strength along the way. Now she's finally ready to share it all. Round 3 is total chaos. I'm using the hairdryer and vacuum cleaner, and there's an alarm going off, all while I read the introduction to the BBC's Royal Charter. Royal Charter for the continuance of the British Broadcasting Corporation. Elizabeth II, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Royal Charter for the continuance of the British Broadcasting Corporation. Elizabeth II, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Well, let's talk to David Bagdasarian from CRISP. And David, my first question is, are you using your noise cancelling tech? Because we will be listening for every bit of background noise.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always turned on my laptop. Let me clap and demonstrate. You won't hear anything.
Now, we have thrown a lot at the software today, and it did a really good job, although with some of the louder noises, it did make the voice sound a bit processed. Is that something you're working on?
We have a number of technologies we are working on right now, and at some point it's going to start adapting to your voice, and it's going to be like way more amazing than this demo, actually.
Now, both CRISP and RTX Voice work really well on a laptop with pretty much any video calling app you could want, but you're much more limited on Android and iOS smartphones. So are you hoping to partner with individual apps?
We are doing those very strategically, right? We are very careful who we are partnering with. We did partner with Discord, for example, and now CRISP is powering 200 million of their users when they do like voice communication. So we think that was a great partnership and very proud of that.
I've really thrown a lot at both of these systems today using deliberate background noise, but both of them have done a pretty good job of cleaning it up even under extreme circumstances. Now, NVIDIA is keen to point out that its system is just a test at the moment, but for gamers who already have those high-end RTX graphics cards, it's a nice extra feature to have and should stop annoying background noise getting into your voice chat when gaming online. And for everybody else, software like CRISP can help clean up our voice calls and video calls if you can't convince your housemates to be quiet.
Chris Fox coming through loud and clear. And that's it for this week. Thanks for being there again. Lara, thank you for being there again.
My pleasure. Throughout the week, you can keep track of the team, albeit from home, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at BBC Click.
Tell you what, if I'm brave enough, I might even put the trim online. Don't hold me to it though. I tell you what, why not send us your photos of your lockdown haircut disasters? Make me feel better. Thanks for watching and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.